what other factors led to you being able to pick up on the issue, and how did you kind of decide where and how to focus your energies?
We need to give thanks to the controversial hashtag #MeToo movement, because that pretty much helped us in the sense that we were faced with a lot of incredulity, people not believing, or even us getting threatened, being asked, are you guys doing this to raise funds, inventing problems. That's what we were asked, whether we were inventing issues in order to get funding. So when the hashtag #MeToo movement exploded on the global scene, we did have the Danish People Aid, come in and asking us, did we have a gender-focused type of program? So we told them, take a chance on this. And they really took a chance, because I do know they had their own apprehension as well, and doubts, in terms of how this was going to go through. First of all, the evidence that we had was mostly anecdotal. And we had done a number of videos, to try and collect some of this evidence. And the Danes did come in, they themselves verified some of the anecdotal evidence, and it took off from there. So the first thing we did, of course, was research, because of course we need to back our claims. And you're aware the data was horrifying, that up to 31% women in two of the largest informal settlements here in Kenya were victims of sextortion. There was also looking at SGBV, but also in terms of the recommendations. What were the recommendations? Now, we knew it was a long game that we're going to have to play, because the law was non-existent. There was no law against sextortion, nor was it mentioned. There were some gray areas, but not enough to capture really what was going on, whether within the Sexual Offences Act, whether in the Penal Code. It was just not sufficient or adequately captured. And I'm happy to say that in 2024, when the legal opinion came from the Kenya Law Reform Commission, it did confirm basically what we had been saying in the last 6 to 7 years. But more interestingly, it was in terms of, okay, legitimizing, like I said, the issue at the national level, getting all these the informal settlements, the groups, the various partners on board, explaining what was going on, with the support, of course, of the Water Integrity Network. WaterAid did come and support as well in terms of content and material. But the other thing, I think, which was why this program was such a black swan, is that we had to set up a social support center, because we're in the business of trying to help people, and the first help that was required was actually that. Maybe I'll let Malesi speak more to some of those activities.
Yeah, actually the psychosocial support, and at one point, Rebecca, you mentioned what could we tell the others who would want to do this, is to remember that this is about people, that their actual lives that are involved in these violations. So it's not just about the laws, it's not just about the future. I mean, it's not about thinking laws cannot be applied retrospectively, and therefore all the victims in the past, would just be a statistic. In this case, it's about people who are here, who have experienced violations, who and I think one of our champion legislators put it very aptly, that when you talk about sextortion in the water sector, this is something that you have to live with for the rest of your life. And it's not just about a violation. It's about every time you go and drink water, you remember the violations that have been done to you to access that water. So even in the future, if you are just receiving, regular water, you still associate it with what you had to go through. And therefore, it's a real issue about people. And therefore, the issue about psychosocial support is something that really is an important intervention. One, because it helps people heal from that violation itself or deal with it, not necessarily heal, deal with it. But two, it also gives the comfort to the victims that they can get the courage to speak about the issue, to provide the support. And I would say quite a bit of our momentum was built by the fact that most of these victims understood, based on that psychosocial support, that we were not just there to get the numbers, it was not just a project for us. It was an intervention that really was focused on people. And it was amazing, the responses that emanated from there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think to add, absolutely, Malesi is absolutely right. Yeah, Honorable Pasari said, you're right, because she said they drink their abuse every day, wash themselves with their abuse every day. And this is something, of course, we came under criticism for, in terms of why are WASH organizations getting involved in mental health activities. But we were like Malesi said, these are people, these are human, there's an actual problem over here. Yes, we can continue with interventions trying to increase access to water, the endless interventions, but what about that hurt, that has been caused? And it's true that actually did power up our intervention quite a bit moving forward. And we made a promise. We made a promise that we would get them the law, at least to start with that, because even with the police, it was an issue in terms of reporting, because they're like, for minors, it's easier to report because you have the statutory rape, but then for adults, the number was much higher on the adult side. What is she reporting exactly? And of course, we had, those awful concepts of willing buyer, willing seller. We had to unbundle consent, what is actually consent, so there was a lot of stuff that had to be sifted through, really separating the wheat from the chaff in terms of this work that was being done. But this for us was, the report had come out. It was widely received, and it served us in terms of, for us, it was more in terms of, okay, this has to form the basis now for legislation moving forward and the policy papers. By then, the legislator, Honorable Pasaris, had already joined us. But even she was waiting, because making laws costs money. So in terms of, how do we, and by then the program had already ended. So this was really on a pro bono basis that this work was being done at this point, in terms of ensuring that we kept our promise that to the people. And the day petition was actually being submitted in Parliament, the people, Malesi and I, we asked them, did we not keep our promise to you? And they said, yes, you did. Thank you. Yes, you did. So we, like I said, even if it were to take us a decade, it will probably take us another 2-3 years, in terms of getting it into legislation to be enacted. But this was, it is true. It is actually one of the best programs, I think, or the best interventions within the water sector, I would say easily in the last 2 decades.
What you mentioned about the momentum building, and what, when you conducted that initial research that was supported by the Danish People's Aid, what was the initial reaction to the research, both kind of in Kenya, as well as more on a kind of international level? How did people respond?
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of disbelief. And people just can't relate sexual abuse with water access.
Yeah.
They struggle to see that. But fortunately for us, I think on one part, there was already documentation and record of sextortion in other sectors. So sex for fish, sex for grades, which had come out quite strongly in the media and in the public arena. But still, the fact that we had the numbers and we had the testimonies was very useful, because then we could put, it wasn't just an abstract research that was projecting an issue. We could put names to the challenge. We could pinpoint exactly where it was happening and the context in which it was happening. So it generated some interest, I would say, at the initial level. And I remember in 2017, when we were making the presentation in Stockholm during the World Water Week, the room was full, I remember.
Yeah.
But then the question is, what happens after that? So you could clearly see there was a lot of attraction to the subject matter, but then getting traction in terms of now taking action and supporting it directly was still a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And as Sarin mentioned, sometimes you need a watershed moment that then just helps, put things in context. The Me Too just happened to coincidentally occur at the same period of time. And then, of course, the Danish People's Aid coming in with not specifically following the Me Too, but as a country, the fundraising theme for that year for them also was for the girl child. And I think it just fell in line for us, and it became something new. But when you ask about the reaction, I remember very strong opposition, actually. Sarin, you might remember the managing director of Nairobi Water Company saying that he would come in person to denounce our reports. And he was saying that he was very certain that that was not happening within his territory, because that was his service provision area. So even this resistance, this is now official resistance. And along the line, we've also noted, up to this year, even just getting the ministry directly, committing itself and involving, you can still see a lot of resistance, not based on refusal, but largely uncertainty in terms of, okay, if we admit this, what does it mean for us? What can we do about it? And sometimes that reception is largely based on that uncertainty. The fact that either they think it is normal, either they think that it is happening, but they can do nothing about it, or three, just saying, no, it's not happening. So it could be either of those three.
Yeah. I think maybe even to add on to that, I mean, in terms of the reception of the report, I was really shocked, and I called it out, Rebecca, when we were told that the numbers were too small. And I was like, if you can't sort out then the small one, I don't know how on earth you're going to sort out the big one. And it starts with the small one. There's a terrible violation taking place, born out of a number of things: weak governance, poor access, cultural things, behavioral issues, and has impacted something as basic as water. So if, okay, you think it's that small, then come help sort it out. But it's true. Then I think also, Rebecca, I think on a side note, we've been talking a lot about the decolonization of knowledge and WASH, we also felt to a certain extent, to be honest, that because maybe our report was not signed or endorsed by maybe a northern doctor, let's just put it that way, it didn't, you know, its legitimacy was being questioned. But honestly, for us, that was the least of our concerns. It was in terms of what are we going to do with whether you want to sign on to this report or not. We were not necessarily looking for that validation. It was more in terms of a promise had been made that we were going to try and sort this problem out to the best of our ability. We felt that the best was the law, because now you have to start punishing. Now what do we do moving forward? So this was really in terms of us just working within ourselves. I think we do appreciate that, you know, it inspired the Bangladesh report as well, you know, so that it was actually picked up. I understand, I think Sierra Leone was interested in doing something similar, or was it Liberia, one of the countries that wanted to take a look at this. So, and it is true, there was a perfect alignment of the stars. The constellation was right on both occasions.